the most diverse city in the Commonwealth with more than 63 languages spoken, directly from Malden, Massachusetts. This is Culture Matters.
Cultura importa.
La cultura importa.
伯顿市关注文化
Culture Matters in Malden.
I am Osa Schwab, host for this episode, a conversation about the unique culture of OnStage Dance Company and how after 15 years of growth, it continues to discover ways to foster a collaborative and generous spirit as it celebrates the creative agency of each dancer and redefines what being a dancer is and looks like. Such a delight to have you here on Culture Matters in Malden. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation.
Thank you for having us to have the conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. We are very excited to talk about all things dance today.
Mm-hmm.
To set the stage for what we're going to talk about and on stage and its impact, I wanted to ask you, Jen, tell me a little bit about the origins of OnStage. What prompted you to create that space for yourself and for dancers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny that you say to create it for myself, because if I'm going to be honest, that's why I started it. At the time, I was fresh out of college, and I really wanted to continue dancing and performing. And back at that time in Boston, there weren't many opportunities to do that. And I had looked back at the experience I had in college and some study abroad opportunities I had that were dance related, and I just was like, well, if there's no opportunities out there, I guess I'll just create one for myself. And started out very much just, I want to be able to continue dancing. And then it has spiraled out of control ever since, to include a much larger and wider community of dancers that I didn't even really know existed at the time.
And when you say you wanted to be continuing to dance, do you mean in a professional capacity for pay or more just seriously dancing?
I think growing up, dance was always such a huge part of my life, but I never really considered it as a professional career. That wasn't really of interest to me for a variety of reasons. But I think for me, it was more about getting to create. It was about just getting to be up on that stage. There's something really magical about being up on stage with other dancers and with the audience watching. And I couldn't imagine heading into my adult life without having that still be a part of it. So really, it was just about that. It was about the personal experience, about the community building that could potentially happen. And a professional career was never really of interest.
And Jessica, tell me about your path to OnStage.
Yeah, so funny enough, Jen was actually one of my dance teachers when I was growing up at my home studio. She came and started teaching, I believe, when I was like halfway through high school. And then I knew like through her that she also had a company on the side. And I knew that like very similarly to Jen and many others that dance was always going to be a part of my life in some capacity. And so like graduating high school, leaving a traditional studio setting, going to college and studying dance there. And then graduating and kind of asking myself like, okay, where am I going to find dance now? So like having that in the back of my mind, knowing that like Jen was always going to be a connection and that former students of hers also like would go and join the company. And so when I showed up for classes and to audition, there were a lot of people my age kind of in that same boat, just like finishing college or finishing up the whatever was the path after high school and feeling the need to still find movement in dance and perform. And it existed already there in my backyard. And I was like, this makes the most sense here to continue my dance and on stage.
What is special about dance, how would you describe it for yourself personally as it is a part of your life, what it does for you, or alternatively, what happens when you don't have dance?
Do you want to take this first?
Oh, there's so many directions I could take that question. I love it so much, and I also feel like it's a hard one to answer because I have a million answers. But I think for me, when I don't dance, because I did have periods where that was the case, it's just a little bit mundane, I guess you could say. You know, you sort of, you go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, like you watch TV, and then what else is there? I mean, you know, as an adult, you have to be really intentional about creating connections or having an activity, a hobby, a something. It's not like when you're younger, when you're in school, when activities are sort of provided for you, or your parents might sign you up for things. You know, when you're an adult, you really have to be intentional about that sort of thing. So going back to the question about dance is, for me, I feel the most myself. And I think what I mean by that is I'm not always the most articulate or able to express emotions through words very much, but I can very much do that through movement. And so if I'm feeling a particular way or something is upsetting me in the greater world, whatever it might be, I can always translate that into choreography, into movement, into teaching that to other people, and us, you know, expressing that and experiencing that together in the studio. And to me, it's just a really fulfilling activity. Activity almost feels like not a good enough word, you know. It's just it's an artistic experience for me. It's fulfilling to me. Yeah.
It almost sounds like it's a way to bring the inside out to the physical world in collaboration with other people.
Yes, that is a perfect way to say it, especially when sometimes you don't have the words to express something. Even if you theoretically could, you're like, I don't even know.
Don't quite know how to make real in a sense. Like, I can embody that through a song that I feel connected to, or just going and moving, and it doesn't have to be this big performance or routine. It can just be something small, and just the idea of sharing that and in making that something that can be shared with others. And so for me, it allows me to stay grounded in my own experience, because I think that, especially for me, I do not dance professionally. It's not like my main like life path, I suppose, but it is equally as part of it as my professional life. And I found in times where my job gets really crazy and I don't have as much time as I would like to be intentional with my movement, I kind of start to feel a little crazy, or a little like kind of like stuck inside. And it's just, I don't know where to put this. And I didn't quite know what that was until I started dancing again after graduating college and having a little bit of a break. It's like, oh, that's what this was. That was kind of this getting the zoomies. That's what I call it. Like, if I have a lot of like I had something in here that I just needed to get out, and it was fixed by simply moving. And so I think that for me, dance is that thing that keeps me grounded and allows me to be able to go through life feeling like I'm sharing something with the world, that I'm honoring what I find important in my life, and just like generally making me a happier person through expression.
I'm really curious about what was the invitation to both of you to start dancing? Because it seems to me that OnStage, to some extent, is an invitation to others. But what was the invitation to you?
Oh, I love that you said that. Thank you so much. An invitation to others. Well, the lore for me, the traditional story was always, my grandmother would always say, man, this got out of control. When you turned 4 years old, I offered to send you to a dance class as part of your birthday present. I thought, oh, you'll keep you busy for a couple of weeks. And now look what's happened. So, even from when I was little, I was just sent to class like most little girls are, sent to a ballet class at that age. And it just so happened I was fortunate to be sent to a studio that had a really robust dance program. And I think I just got swept into it. And as she said, it got out of control.
Sounds like a good kind of out of control.
Yes.
No, I mean, very similar to you. It was also the choice of my family to say, okay, like you're 3 years old, you're 4 years old, like let's try something and let's put you in dance class. And it was ballet class. And my mother, it was just a logical choice for her because she also grew up dancing and performing. And so it was part of her life that she signed me up for, and I never looked back, because that was when I was 3 and now I'm 23 and still doing it. So it definitely made an impression.
That's beautiful. So I'm curious about what you think others need in terms of an invitation, because you two had the fortune of having family and an opportunity to take a class. Now you have this on stage, which is presenting the opportunity to others. But what needs to be present for people in order to find that step to try dance? Because I imagine so many people don't try it who really probably have a locked up dancer inside.
Do you want to take this or do you want me to take it? Because I think, yes, because whenever I don't know if you experience this, but whenever I meet people and I say that I dance or I'm a dancer, the response is most often like, oh, I could never do that. I can't dance. Mm-hmm. And my response,
I wish I could do that.
Or I wish
I would have had that. Oh, it's too late for me.
Or I did it when I was young, and then I quit and I just never went back. But
I could never do it. I'm so rusty. I could never. Yeah. We're listing off basically all of the things we hear from people when we try to promote the company. This is what they say. Yeah.
And it just demonstrates that what those people need is a permission structure to be able to kind of get past that. So if we hear like, oh, I'm rusty, I haven't danced in a very long time, our first response is,
me too.
that me too is definitely has been a response. But more often than not, it's, well, not everybody here does this every single day. Not everybody here does this every single day. Not everybody here chose to do this with their life. But what is here that is shared amongst everyone is everyone wants to do this and finds joy in loving it. So it's always like, no matter if you danced yesterday or it's been years, come take a drop-in class. Jen does her own series. This past summer, we were able to do an on-stage class series. And so those are opportunities that we have available, but also just really trying to let everybody know that no matter what schedule you have or what you choose to do with your time, there's an option for you to be able to participate in re-fall in love with something that you really love. And as the marketing coordinator, like, I really try to make sure that our outward presentation, like not just our personal conversations, but our outward presentation online, like people can see themselves reflected, and so they feel less apprehensive about going to the website or joining a class, because they see the people that are in the company, they can find familiar faces, and they can remind themselves like, yeah, I can do this, and there's no reason why I shouldn't give myself that.
Mm-hmm. And I think another thing I want to add to that is, one of the things that I try to highlight as the director is, I think, something that makes our company really unique, which is our leveling structure. Mm-hmm. And so, to kind of get a little technical for a moment, the way that the audition process works specifically for our performance company is, you come into audition for a style and a level, as opposed to you're in or you're out, right? So essentially it puts the power in the dancer as opposed to the choreographer or myself as the director. So what I mean by that is, you could come into the audition and you can choose if you want to audition for tap, jazz, contemporary, or commercial dance, or all four of them. And then there's a specific rubric that is given. It's right on our website, actually, so anybody can look at it. But it's shared with the dancers prior to the audition, so they can see what the expectation will be at the audition, so they know before even walking into the door, what they might be asked to present or to show. And it also says what skills you need to reach level 1, 2, or 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go in and say, well, I know my turns are a little shaky, but I'm really good at leaping, or I'm really good at the performance value, or I'm really good at whatever it might be of the skills that are listed on the rubric. And I feel like it takes away the fear or the intimidation a little bit, because we try to be very transparent about what the expectations are. And dancers know going in that, there's a place for me, and I kind of have an idea where that place is based on what I see on this list. And then once you finish with the audition, you find out what your level and styles are, then you get to choose what dances you want to do within those parameters. So there isn't what's traditional casting is like me as director or choreographer, I choose you, I don't choose you. And we don't do any of that. It's really to the dancers, what do you want to do? And, we have some guidelines so that it works out and everybody's happy. But essentially, it's what do you want to do, and what kind of experience do you want to have within the company? And I think that's what sets us apart, but also is that permission, right? Because it's saying, like, we want you to be here. We want to make it as easy as possible. We want the entry to be as simple as it can, that sort of thing.
Especially,
go ahead.
Sorry. Especially, I don't know if this is something, we talked about this last time and maybe you'll bring it up, but it also speaks to the fact that dance has not always had a permission structure for people to feel comfortable participating.
I don't think ever.
Or ever.
Maybe ever.
Maybe us. But it's never been part of dance, because you typically go into like a post grad audition and you're just in the room with a number and everyone's kind of a little nervous because the energy feels very intense and high stakes, but that's not something that I've seen in our experience. And throughout that kind of overarching feeling that we try to portray, there's no kind of culture of perfectionism or kind of overworking oneself. It's very much like you are here to create, you are here to find community, you are here to do what you love. And I think that dance, if that was the message in the community, then I think a lot of performers and a lot of people would feel like they didn't have to work so hard to find permission to create art and create dance. And so I think it's really important to bring that up, because I do think it's our responsibility as artists and creatives to acknowledge shortfalls of our own profession and field and environment and work very intentionally to address that. And I think that's something that we do really well.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting point you bring up. It reminds me of some research where studying the difference between feeling threatened and how that affects the brain and limits the creativity versus working towards something and how that opens up the sophisticated thought and creativity. And I'm curious about this permission structure and a more democratic approach and how that figures with outcome and excellence in your craft. Because some people might say, well, how are you going to do something of quality, and how do expectations fill a role in that whole process?
Oh, I have a few different thoughts about that. I think the first thing that pops into my head is who is deciding what is quality and what isn't, right? I think it's important as performers that we present an experience that is enjoyable for an audience, right? Like that's because dance is also, unless you're secluded in a studio, dance is also performance. So you do want the audience to enjoy it theoretically. But one thing, okay, I'm going to take a little tangent here. One thing that Mark Linehan said to me, he was former, what's the role?
Cultural council?
Yeah, he was the chair. Thank you. I was about to say president. I have election in my mind. He was the former chair of the Mundane Cultural Council, of which I'm also a member. And when I first joined, and we were doing the meetings to decide how to disperse the funds and whatnot, he said something that really resonated to me, which was, it's not our job to decide if the art is good. It's just our job to give people the opportunity to create, and then what comes of it, right? And I mean, because art is so subjective that who has the authority to say it's good or not good, right? You might see something and hate it, and I'll see it and I'll be like, what are you talking about? That's the best thing I've ever seen. So I think that's number one, is that quality is essentially in the eye of the beholder or in the body of the performer. So I would challenge any question of whether what we do is quality or not, because obviously, in my opinion, everything we do is wonderful.
Second.
Right? But what I would also say is that I see that every season, and have seen that for 15 years now. When I see a dancer join the company first season, they're really shy. They maybe sign up for one dance. They talk to people, but they're a little reserved. And then next season, they sign up for 5 dances. They're maybe auditioning choreography.
Right.
They're maybe, coming to all of our social events. And so just removing that feeling of what you said, of feeling threatened, you walk into a place, you're brand new, you don't know what to expect, you kind of tiptoe your way into it. And then if the environment is welcoming, is positive, it makes you feel safe and secure, then you're going to just dive right in, right? And so I've seen dancers who they'll come into the audition their first season, and they do pretty well. They they level, maybe they could have done a little more with the performance, whatnot. And then next season they re-audition, and it's like, oh my goodness, it's like a whole new person.
Wow.
And it's not because they necessarily, like they were working so hard, like they were working out, no, it's just that they felt more comfortable, and then they allowed themselves, right, to really release any tension that they might have had, or self-consciousness, or whatever it might be. And then the quality of the work just gets better by feeling more comfortable. That's what I would say there.
And I think that, at least for me, and at least through my practice, like I'm really careful to not center and this is maybe a hot take, not center the audience or like how I think I'm being perceived in my performance. And although most often, I mean, all art, but especially dance is created to be watched, it can seem a little counterintuitive, but I think that growing up dancing in a traditional studio setting, and just like feeling the need to be perfect and feeling the need to perform all the time. As I got older, as we get older, and we kind of are more in tune with ourselves, like realizing how that can be problematic or have an adverse effect on what you're trying to convey through your movement. And so I think that with the technique is kind of the structure and kind of like that rubric idea, like the turns and the leaps, and kind of like, do you have the basics? But that is not the marker of good material or material that is worth grant money or material that should or shouldn't be shared. Like it's the expression, it's the function of the thing that we're doing. It doesn't have to be palpable for everybody, but somebody will always see a piece of dance and feel something from it. And if we can evoke something, then I think that matters more than feeling like I need to perform or need to create something for the sake of just making a product.
And we see that reflected too in our audience, because majority of our audience are friends, family, community, people that we have other connections with. And we've had a long-standing tradition where after the first show, always have 2 shows in the day. After the first show, we always convene after everybody had their lunch break and whatnot, and we share feedback that we've heard from our guests who have come to the show. And it's one of my favorite parts of the day, because not only do we get to hear like immediate feedback of what people thought, but the feedback is so varied. It's, if we have, let's say offhand, we had 15 pieces in a show. It's not, oh, that one was the best, that one was the favorite. We get feedback from every single piece, and it'll be, oh, my dad really loved this one. He doesn't know anything about dance, but he just really loved that, or my little sister was so, just love that one contemporary dance or whatever it might be. My little brother, he never comes to shows, and he just he loved it. My best friend, she used to dance when she was a kid, and now she's asking about auditions because she never thought she could dance again, but she saw our show, and now she wants to join. I mean, so, we get a lot of firsthand feedback almost immediately after that first show, and I think it speaks to, the quality, if you will, about what we create, and that's why I feel really confident about that.
My personal favorite is, I don't know what that was supposed to be about, but it was so cool. And it's just, it just shows you don't have to thread a story together. I'm just there watching it, and it's cool. I don't know anything else, but it's cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk for a minute about the sense of community that you generate. I mean, there's the dance, and then being invited into this space to dance together. But number one, you talk about OnStage as being inclusive and really striving to blow stereotypes out the window and invite anyone. And how do you do that in a concrete way? Because I'm part of in my view, inclusivity is also about an invitation, and sometimes the exclusion comes without people realizing it. And it's just that it's not on my radar to even do this. It's not that I'm being rejected, but the pathway to that space, it doesn't exist. And so how do you create those pathways for the kinds of people that you want to include into the dance company?
Yeah, I really want to let Jessica answer that, because I know she's going to say something just so beautiful. but I want to intro that by acknowledging that was not always at the top of my mind. And like you said, just because I just didn't think of it that way. For me, when I first started, it was always, like I said, I just want to dance. And that's where it ended, really. And it wasn't until the company was starting and going, and you kind of see how people interact with each other and what people value, and how things manifested in the earlier years of the company as it was growing. And then as a director, you start to learn, oh, okay, I do have certain values around this that I just didn't even consider before. And, I'm seeing these certain interactions with the company. That doesn't align with what matters to me, or what I think is important, or what I want to present to the community as
what kind of interact.
Well, like we were saying, that dance does have a long history of exclusion, of things like hierarchies or body image issues. Dance has torn a lot of women down, specifically because of body type, body image, all those sorts of things. And I think that in the earlier seasons, that was still ingrained in some of the dancers that would join, because everybody was coming from different experiences, right? Before they walked through the door, who knows what kind of experience they had in other places. And so there was we did have some issues with dancers who, were maybe trying to criticize others, or a little catty, or a little, different drama happening. And that was my first opportunity. And again, I was very young too. I was in my early mid-20s. So I didn't know anything about, directing in that capacity. I knew how to put on a show, but in terms of the interpersonal stuff, it just was sort of beyond my scope. But I was able to, through that experience, to step back and say that's not what this is going to be about. I don't want to entertain that. I don't want this to be part of our culture here, and then you take steps to weed those people out, and then be more intentional about how you present the company, how you talk to people when they ask about it, making sure when they first walk in the door, what kind of experience do you want them to have, so that they know that this is a place that they belong, and that if there are issues that arise, you nip that in the bud as quickly as possible, and be really clear that we don't do that here. That's really important. So I'm going to throw it to Jessica to say more lovely things about that. But
I think that with inclusivity in saying that diversity is focal point is very important, but it only matters if you actually follow through with making that a priority. And so one of the ways that we're kind of thinking about that and being more connected to the Malden community, the greater Boston community, because it is so diverse and values art so much. We now on the board have a community engagement director. And we are trying, I mean, this is kind of the first trial in that endeavor. Hopefully one of many, but just finding places in the Malden community, or I'm from Medford, and we rehearse in Somerville and Cambridge, and finding opportunities to be in community with other artists and be in community with our neighbors that maybe don't experience art or have never been exposed to it, and we're showing them like, hey, this is a thing that you can do with people that you love and try something new, and like this is what we're all about. So that's one thing, just being really intentional about finding places in the community. And when we do that through marketing, like you said, not everybody, I don't remember which one of you said it, but just not everybody is plugged in or accessing the same information or have the same lived experiences. So they're not always being reached. In my professional life, I work in electoral politics. And so my whole kind of core question of my job is how to reach the unreachable people, to give them the information that they need to participate. And for me, it comes down to meeting people where they are, rather than kind of just like putting things out into the void and hoping that they reap some sort of benefit. But I think both of those things together are important. So in terms of meeting people where they are, like we were trying to think of new ways to market in addition to social media ads. And when Jen first started the company 15 years ago, they did physical flyering and posters and just stuck them on telephone poles. And I think that when we moved toward the digital age, people forgot about that, but I do find that people will look at those posters, and they're in busy places, and they're in places like public libraries or like the local ice cream shop. So we're putting information about our community in a community that's already so vibrant. And so like that's an additional way, plus the social media, plus just by virtue of us posting on like Greater Boston Dance Community pages, and just really finding every possible avenue. Like no form of outreach is too small, because I believe that, you know, even if you only talk to 4 people, if you're at an event in, you know, downtown Malden, that's 4 more people that you connected with that you wouldn't have otherwise met. And even though you can't always measure that direct impact, like, you know that you made one. And I think that is very much central to dance in what we do. It's making connections, sharing stories, and in doing it in a way that brings us closer together as artists, but also like reminds us of the broader community and like why that like capital C community is so important.
Nice. So as you're working on productions, and I would imagine there's an element of community that's brewing, and there are perhaps, with any community, there's disagreement, or I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing, or I missed that, or frustration, or any number of things, because that's just the nature of community and people with emotions and different ideas of how things should end up. So how can you paint me a picture of an example where that happens, and how you navigate and kind of come to resolution?
Yeah, and we had to reckon with that, as I said, in the early seasons, and figuring out how to navigate things like that. Any given season could include anywhere from 50 to 60 plus number of people. So anytime you have that many people, even if everybody has the best intentions, you know, you're always going to have some sort of disagreement or whatever it might be. So one of the things that I'm most proud of is having a board that is just 100% committed and immersed in the culture of the company. And we have a board liaison program, as we call it, which is each of our board members, and we currently have 5, right? So each of our board members are assigned to dances that we have for a particular season. So for example, if we had 15 dances, each board member would have 3 dances that they're assigned to, and those are the ones that they sort of oversee and just make sure everything is going well. And so part of that is, checking in every week, and just sending out an email. Hey, how's it going, guys? Just checking in. Is everything okay? Are there any issues that you're having? And that could be, if they disagree about something that's happening, they could maybe help mediate a conversation about that, or they can get advice on how to bring that up if they're maybe a little shy, or they, some people are not as comfortable to bring up things that they might disagree with. They also help support the choreographers in terms of, helping make decisions about costuming and how to run a rehearsal and that sort of thing, to try to alleviate or prevent problems from even occurring in the first place. And then another piece of that is we have a mentoring program. So we have more veteran choreographers who can sign up to mentor a more novice choreographer, and they work together throughout the season to, review choreography or help with ideas, or give feedback on how they think things could run more smoothly, or maybe they give advice on how the choreography could be more dynamic, whatever it might be. Each of the choreographers have different needs and expectations, but that's another way that there's sort of this big sister, little sister program, so to speak. So we've built in a lot of support systems to kind of, as I said, help prevent issues from arising in the first place, but catching things right away if they do, and just being able to sort of resolve problems right away. And I think we've been really successful with that. And I think that is one of the reasons why our community is so strong, because all the dancers know that there's so many people in support roles that they can go to. If they don't feel comfortable coming to me for whatever reason, they can go talk to Jessica, or they can go talk to our board president or secretary, whoever it might be. And there's a lot of, sort of pathways for support.
No one's ever left hung out to dry. So we have rehearsals Sunday, Monday, Tuesdays. And on Sundays, that's when the bulk of our rehearsals are. And there are always people in the hallway, hanging out and showing each other costumes and catching up on the week, non-dance stuff, but also bonding over, oh, my sciatica is bothering me today. Or oh, do you need the massage gun? Or oh, hair elastic, anybody? And so it's really nice to be a part of that and be an agent of it, and work very intentionally to hold on to that and make sure that is what everybody feels all of the time when they walk into a rehearsal with us.
I'm hearing of a steady learning process, that it starts with the intention, your desire, and your heart to allow everybody to have this experience of dancing together and producing and creating something together. But you're paying attention to learn along the way how to curate that.
I think it's the benefit of having been around so long. So we're about to celebrate 15 years in 2025, which is insane to me. But the beauty of that is that it has allowed me the time to trial and error and experiment and see what works and what doesn't work. And I'm really grateful for that, and especially grateful that now I have a board that is just so on board. Oh, that was cheesy.
I like it.
Right. But really, my team is what keeps things going. I couldn't achieve what I have. The company wouldn't be what it is without such a strong team who really understands the values of the company and works so hard to uphold that and to make it a reality. And so, thank you, Jessica.
Thanks. Thanks for because honestly, I think it's easier because we're dancers, but I feel as though we're so naturally collaborative, because very rarely are we producing work in isolation. And I think that between this kind of progression of what the company is and what we value, and expanding the board over the years and having more positions and kind of more tailored tasks and goals, it's allowed you, through the company, to start producing your own work and shows that are sponsored by OnStage, that welcome in other artists from the greater Boston area, and not just have our OnStage community over at Paula Terenzi's down the street or Stand Up, but it allows us to open that up to other artists who are also trying to create that on their own. And it's just like one big happy community of all this shared work and shared experiences that are all different, but all different reflections of the things we all value as dancers and artists.
As we close out this conversation, I want to reflect on two things together. And one is you said something beautifully that because we're dancers, we rarely do things in isolation. And I want to understand from your perspective, what are the implications of what you're doing with OnStage, the magic that is happening, the community that you're developing and you're creating together on the greater society? What can the Malden community or any broader community, maybe not dancers, learn from what you're doing and what you're achieving?
I love that question. So one of the things that we said last time is the idea of creating something that everybody can stand behind, and that art helps us live and experience life very vividly and not just survive and just merely get through it. And so even if you're an audience member who's never danced and you maybe can't relate to like this abstract modern thing that's happening in front of you, and there's big pants and there's like weird music and it's like, what am I seeing? But there's value in new experiences and being a little uncomfortable and being challenged. And even as dancers, like when choreography is set on us, sometimes we'll get something and we're like, what is this supposed to feel like? Or like, what is this supposed to mean? And so this kind of discomfort with experiencing something new. And also just like, I think uniquely post-COVID, but, you know, I think more broadly in like the modern era is that we don't value connection in the ways that we used to. And I think a lot of us are probably craving community and connection more than we realize because for a while we just got so wrapped up in our own things. And like me as a person feels one way about it, but me as a dancer who went from having all of this space to rehearse to just this like tiny little room where I was taking my Zoom dance classes on, and this being in isolation, doing that, it wasn't wrong because there's no wrong way to make dance, but it felt like something was missing, and it was the act of sharing it with somebody. And so no matter where, how, like that is to me the most important part. It's like, what am I sharing with you and how is it making you feel? And are you seeing the world or this differently because of it? And I think that's in the most broad sense what dance offers to the greater community.
Yeah, I think I would add a few things to that, which is talking about quality of life. And I think sometimes as adults, we get really wrapped up in, oh, I got a lot of bills to pay. I have a lot of responsibilities. Maybe you have kids at home. Maybe you have parents you need to take care of, whatever it might be. And you can very easily get stuck in a rut or in a routine that doesn't really provide any quality of life, right? You're just sort of like trying to survive. And I think that's why the arts are so critical and so important, is that it really helps you to open your eyes a little wider and just experience something more than the mundane. And so I think that is very important. I think also sort of bouncing off of what you're talking about, like post-COVID era, but especially now, I mean, there's so much happening in the world at large, in our country right now. So many, what do I want to say about this?
How much time do we have?
I'm not trying to be diplomatic necessarily, but I'm trying to, I'm thinking about how I want to say this. Is just when we're exposed to different things, different people, different experience, it opens our minds up to acceptance, if that's how I can say it. I think that the reason there's so much conflict in community right now, and I'm talking really specifically about, like, you know, wider. We just had an election. Like, there's no way to get around that topic. I think that the reason that there's so much, tension, hatred, discrimination is because people don't experience others who are different from them, right? You live in a bubble. You don't know anybody everybody that you know is like you, right? And so it's hard for you to empathize with people who are different. My point being that by being exposed to artistic opportunities, community opportunities, stepping outside of your bubble, I think it opens the door for more empathy and a greater understanding that the world is a really big place. There's a lot of people in it. It's not just about you, right? It's not just about you and your personal community, your personal family. There's a greater, wider world.
Perhaps there's a way to learn from OnStage how to make the invitation to people. Seems to me part of it is the feeling of threat. If I venture out beyond my comfort zone or someone's already attacking me, I'm not going to be willing to step into uncharted territory. So finally, what do you dream about or hope for in the future for OnStage?
This is a perfect question because we are heading into the 15th year, and it's been a tradition on the 5th, the 10th, and now the 15th. We have a gala and a retrospective about, the previous seasons. We bring back alum and all that sort of thing. So it is a perfect time where we are thinking about that exact thing of what does the company look like in the next 5 years, 10 years. Oh, goodness. How do I answer that?
I think so. I joined the board almost a year ago, and since then we started having the conversation a year ago of this looking forward, because we knew at this point we would be looking at the 15th anniversary. And so I kind of feel like we had this dream big attitude, and it's funny because I think that artists were very idealistic and not always grounded in physical reality, but that's sometimes a boring place to be. So I think we were very much like, maybe not so specifically being like, this is my punch list of 5 things we must accomplish, but of like broader, like we can really do anything. Like, let's see what we can create that's new and different and see what sticks. And it's like, oh, like that worked. Like, having dancers participate in like a silly video, like people got a lot of joy out of that, being a part of it. So like that seemed to work. That keeps people engaged. Or adding not only just like a community engagement director, but a member engagement person that can check in with our members, make sure they're feeling supported. And so all of those things to me at that point last year felt like things we wanted to do. And then in reflecting, it's like, oh, we've done those, or we made some sort of headway in, being a part of like the Malden community a little bit more broadly, or finding new connections, or gaining new members, which we have a lot of new members this season, which was really exciting, especially after COVID. It was harder to do that outreach, and not just for dance, but for a lot of things. And so to see all of those things come true, even if we didn't necessarily mean for them to manifest that way, has been really gratifying. And I think that it speaks to you, and it speaks to how we work together, that we like really can trust ourselves and trust the vision for what dance and our community can be, and we can just go forward with that, and people do respond.
I think for me, especially at this stage in my life, I am less interested in evaluating the success of OnStage based on like data sets. Like, for example, like how many members do we have? Like how much money are we bringing in for fundraising? Those things are all very important. But for me at this stage in my life, having run this company for 15 years, success to me looks like, how do we make people feel, right? And it's, if I walk away with any like tiny, legacy within this tiny microcosm of the community that I live in this dance world, I want people to look at OnStage and know that we're a safe space, know that we're a place that's going to make you feel valued, that we're going to add something to your life that wasn't there before. We're going to inspire some creativity. We're going to, provide outreach opportunities for, connection and community. Like that's what I want the legacy of this company to be. Not so much we were the biggest company in the Boston area, and we put on the most shows. I don't really care about any of that stuff. So yeah, when I look ahead, post 15 years, I think it's that. It's like I want it to be about quality over quantity, as cliche as it might be.
Well, that's a beautiful way to end. I just want to thank you for having this conversation, and I have an urge to have another conversation and maybe bring in a different group doing a different kind of art form. And actually, for some reason, the idea of jazz came to my mind as you were talking, because I'm friendly with quite a number of jazz musicians, and the emergent nature of jazz and how jazz musicians listen to each other and they're creating on the fly, even though they might have a structure. And anyway, I share that just to say, who knows, maybe there's something in the cosmos that's going to emerge with another group.
Dreaming big.
I know. I'm like, we'll bring our dance outfits and we'll put on make a show together with these musicians.
We can
the gears are already
structured
started.
improv to improv.
Yes. Sign us up.
I say, the jazz of dance.
Yeah.
We do jazz.
I mean, now we're going to have to leave this meeting, and now we're going to be like, what kind of programming can we create around this?
like, I'll start a planning talk.
So for the listeners, they're going to be very curious about what is on tap next. So they'll have to listen to this next episode, right?
Yes.
We'll leave them hanging.
And they'll have to go to onstagedancecompany.com, onstagedanceco.com, and also at OnStage Dance Co. on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, she's the best, right?
Absolutely. Thank you both.
Thank you so much for having us.
So
this
much
is
fun.
great.